Looks like we've got a good crowd today, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining. This is Celigo's CloudExtend Office Hours, CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite. So this is our first office hours, and we'd really love to get your feedback after this call. You can email any one of us. Hopefully we do a good job, but we really want to hear your feedback. Today, here are your hosts. On the top left is Justine Berto, is your account executive. Joseph Yeager, your customer success manager. On the bottom right, Kevin Ha, who is your solution consultant. And then on the bottom left is myself. I'm the general manager for Celigo's CloudExtend brand. So this is the agenda, what we want to try and cover today in roughly 30 minutes. We're going to go over maximizing performance, adding newly created NetSuite fields to templates. It's kind of a tip on watching out for the amount field. Burst mode, which is a feature that's soon to come out of beta, then a few other tips and tricks, and then a longer, more involved demo with Kevin that's going to go through creating sales orders and then fulfilling those sales orders all within CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite, and along the way with some tips and tricks inside of that part of the application. Here's some just first tips on maximizing performance. So if you know the internal ID, we always recommend that you're using it. So for example, let's just say you're updating a number of, like a sales order, and you've got a bunch of items on that sales order. If you happen to know the internal IDs, just put them in the double left bracket, the NetSuite internal ID, and then double right bracket format. And then that will tell CloudExtend not to go out and try and resolve that with NetSuite, because that sometimes can take a second or so for each one to resolve. So if you got 60 in there, you'll save 60 times a second or so. Those values do get cached, so the savings might not be that much, but in any event, that's just one good tip for increasing the speed. Use VLOOKUPs to other worksheets to retrieve those internal IDs if you need to. So you may have, you can insert a column in your current CloudExtend Excel table that might have the name for a particular file. And you can always insert any columns as long as you don't put a value in row 1. So row 1 is where we do that mapping to back up to NetSuite. So in row 1, in a column, you could put in, say, an item name or even an external ID, et cetera, and then use a VLOOKUP from another table, another worksheet that would then pull in those internal IDs into the right field in the template and then upload the data. This is really important. Just limit the number of columns to just those that you need. And for example, and I think I go over this on the downloads as well, if you don't need line level data, then definitely don't include it, because let's just say you're updating a sales order and you want to update like a header level field, like a location, just don't include the columns, and your updates and your downloads will be much, much faster, because you won't be pulling in all that line level detail as well. And on downloads, this maybe goes without saying, but we definitely recommend that you use a data filter or even a pre-built NetSuite Save Search just to get the records that you need. So if you're looking at, say, vendor bills and you hit download, you might pull in, a few thousand vendor bills or a few million, depending on the size of your company. So limit the data that you want to see. Also limit the number of columns to those just needed. And then templates without sublist columns, they do load much faster. So if you don't have like a pick list in your column, that will download a lot faster. So you might have, say, a text field in your column. If you don't need to insert a column with a pick list, don't. And then if you don't need to upsert data after you've downloaded it, definitely consider using a pre-built NetSuite Save Search. And I'll go over this in my part of the demo. And then select download as raw data. That's much, much faster, like 10, 20, or possibly even 100 times faster. And then even if you do need to upsert data, consider using that raw data download as your source if it's a huge amount. So let's just say you've got 5,000 sales orders that you need to fix. It will take some time for those to download into a table. So instead, just download them using the raw data and then copy and paste them over into the table. So those are just a few performance tips and tricks. So I'm going to just stop now and pull up my Excel and go through the portion that I wanted to cover. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to cover here is the burst mode upload. So here you can see I've got roughly 2,000 some odd rows, which is nearly impossible to do for a journal entry inside of the NetSuite UI. it would literally take a day or more for someone. In fact, it may not even be possible. It would take forever to do this inside the NetSuite UI. So I'm going to update this with burst mode upload. Then I'm also going to do the same thing with sales orders. I've got roughly 1,800 lines here that spans a number of sales orders. And one of these sales orders actually has 1,350 lines as well. So we hear from customers, they actually do have use cases. We even had one that had a use case for 5,000 lines in a sales order. So that is supported in burst mode upload. Burst mode upload uses something called an asynchronous process with NetSuite that can handle more data. Also important is this distinction between header level and line level fields. So you can see everything I've highlighted here, these are all header level fields. So the fields you'd see kind of above the fold on a NetSuite sales order. Then underneath would be the line level field. So this is where your items would be. So we have item, we've got location, we have quantity, we have the rates, etc. So CloudExtend during the upload process will look for any break in any one of those line level fields. So kind of think of it as one long field concatenated together. And once it finds a break, it stops that record and then goes to create a new record. So if we scroll down here, we can see the first break here is in the entity. So it knows to stop here and then create a new record here. If I had actually chosen, say, a different date and kept the big 5 auto group all the way down, at each change in the date, it would then create a different sales order. So that's essentially how you can create multiple transactions from one upload. So let's go into this update option here, and we're going to just check off use the new burst mode upload. And in this case, I want to upsert all records. So this is going to first fetch some metadata, and then it's pushing all that information up to NetSuite. So that was roughly, I think it was 1,800 and some odd lines. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Yep. So lots and lots of lines. If you guys are ever used to, uploading data with CloudExtend before, you know that that would take a long time without burst mode. Here's the other cool thing that I love about burst mode is I'm going to take this 2,502, I think, line journal entry, and I'm going to use the new burst mode upload here as well. And I'm going to push this up to NetSuite. So these are both now processing in the background in NetSuite, and we'll be alerted a little bit later in the demo, depending on how busy NetSuite is. We'll get an alert back that the particular job is done, and I'll see that here in this upload jobs queue. So one other thing I wanted to show, I'm just going to go to sales orders here, and I'm going to edit a template. This is a really common issue that we see in support a fair amount of time. So in this case, I just wanted to go to create a new transaction body field. So I'm going to come down here to transaction body fields. I'm just going to click on new, and I will call this test sales order field and apply this to a sales order and go ahead and click on save. And if I come back to Excel, I will see that if I type test, I might have something in there called test, but none of them are the right fields. So just click these 3 dots up here and click on refresh. And this will go out to NetSuite and it will say, hey, give me a list of all the custom fields for sales orders. And then we'll be able to see that field. We should be able to see it now. So here's that new field that we just created. So if you're ever not finding your fields, that's one place that you can go to. Okay, then the last thing I wanted to talk about before I turn it over to Kevin for his part of the demo is just be really cautious if you're using the amount field. So in NetSuite, you've got quantity, you have rate, and then you have an amount. So you kind of have a quantity of 3, a rate of 50, and so that means the amount should be 150. But NetSuite has this kind of what I think is quirky behavior that allows you to override the amount. So you could have quantity of 3, rate of 50, and then you could manually set the amount field to 50, which is a common mistake. We see people putting the amount in the template instead of the rate. And then when that sales order gets uploaded to NetSuite, you'll see a quantity of 3, a rate of 50, but the amount also would be set to 50 or whatever you manually set it at. So I typically advise customers just to exclude the amount field from any uploads. I'm going to stop sharing now. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and then we'll come back and take a look at my burst mode upload.
Great, thanks, Chris. All right. So as you can see, going based off of what Chris stated when it comes to the amount field, this is actually my sales order template that I've loaded onto my sheet right here. So if I go to the right-hand side, you can see that I do not have any amount fields. I'm actually just going to enter some of the data into the header level as well as the item level to create a brand new sales order. Okay. So the value that I'm going to enter is going to be my customer under the entity field. And for the other value for the header level is going to be my location. I'm actually going to leave transaction ID and transaction date, sales rep, and currency all blank because that's going to be a system generated value from NetSuite. So once we've created the sales order, I'm going to refresh the data and it's going to pull back that information for me. And for demo purposes, I've already added some of the items here. So I'm just going to copy this. All right, once I've inserted my items, I'm going to go to my quantity. So the one cool thing about this tool is it's going to look at your item record. So for example, for 8491 is going to be my item. If there is already a price level associated with this item itself, the rate itself is going to be blank. I'm actually going to leave this blank because that's going to be system generated. But one key important thing you need to do here is add in the price level in column M right here. And the price level is going to be my base price. And you can see that when I enter in base, it will auto-populate base price for me and it'll validate the value for me. But say, for instance, if 8492 and all the other items are all custom price levels or it just doesn't have a associated price level, you can easily add in a rate here. So when it comes to my rate, I'm just going to add 100. The base price level for this first item is actually going to be 90, and you're going to see that in just a moment. But in order for you to insert a custom price level, what you're going to do here is you're going to do a double bracket, and then it's going to be a -1. And you're basically telling the system that you're going to add it as a custom price level. And the reason why we have to do this is, say, for instance, if I go back into this button right here that says price values, you're going to see in this list here, it's going to be all of the standard price levels or the price levels that you have created for your instance, but it doesn't show a custom option. So in order for you to create a custom, you have to add in the -1 with the double brackets. Okay, so once I have that there, and then when it comes to the tax code, I am just going to add my tax code here, repeat it. And now once I have all my information here, I'm going to go to update. I'm going to select upsert all records. And in just a moment, if everything is correct, you're going to see that in column B, it'll generate a internal ID in green. And as you can see right here. And once I have that internal ID in column B, I'm going to go to refresh, select refresh all. And it's going to pull in all my information for the transaction ID, transaction date, and so forth when it comes to the header level. And the reason why we need to return this information is when it comes to creating a fulfillment, we're going to require the transaction ID and as well as the customer and also some of the information when it comes to the transaction date. So once we have created the sales order, if I go into my other tabs right here, this is kind of showing you the way of using macros. So that's a native or a Excel feature that you can leverage when it comes to using the CloudExtend application. So when it comes to this picking doc, this is actually a great example of, say, for instance, if you want to send an invoice to a customer, you can create a separate Excel template which will house all the information for you to send a invoice to the customer. But for this instance, I am actually going to have this sheet right here to kind of more of the warehouse side if I want to create a picking doc for the warehouse. So once I have that information here, this is all blank. You're going in just a moment when I click on this pick button, you're going to see all the information from the sales order populate into the sheet right here. So once I click on picked, you can see that my date, my ship date, my order number, item, and location are all added into this picking document. And then when it comes to this specific column right here called quantity picked, let's just say when it comes to the warehouse, I only picked 4 of the 5 quantity for all of these items here. I'm actually just going to add 4 quantity. And then now if I go into my next sheet right here, which is my fulfillment sheet, I am going to run a macro, which will populate the data from my picking document as well as my sales order. So now, as you can see, the quantity that was picked is 4, location, item, and the sales order has been populated into my fulfillment template. And then also one key thing to note too is this order line. This is very important because you want to tell the system which line item from the sales order you're picking to fulfill. And one thing I want to show you here is how you can perform a partial fulfillment. So a partial fulfillment, let's just say we go back to the picking document and we'll change it to 0 for the remainder of the items. I'm actually just going to fulfill 5 items right here, as you can see. I am going to delete these other rows from the template. And then you can see that there is an item is fulfilled, and then there's also a replace all field column right here. So for item is fulfilled, this is the checkbox that you normally would check inside of the fulfillment form. If I repeat that to be true, I am going to check those boxes. And then when it comes to the replace all, I'm going to put as false, because you're telling the system that you are only doing a partial fulfillment for the first 5 items, and the remainder of the other items, the other 5 items, you're not going to fulfill those. So you're essentially telling them that you are going to only fulfill 5 out of the 10 items when you claim it as false. So once I have all that information there, I'm going to go back to the beginning right here. The ship status will be auto-populated, or it's going to default it to picked. So once I create it, I'm actually going to change that to ship and update it so the partial fulfillment will go through. So I'm going to go down to update, update all, or upsert all. And in just a sec, you're going to see the internal ID generate. So when we see this generate, we're going to go into NetSuite first. I'm going to refresh my page. And I'm going to click view on this. You can see that this is the fulfillment that we just created for the sales order right here. So the status is going to be picked. You can see that the quantity is 4. I'm going to go back into CloudExtend, and I'm going to refresh the data first. And once it's refreshed, I'm going to change this to shipped. Hit update again. And in just a sec, you're going to see the status of this change inside of NetSuite. When I go back into the fulfillment, you can see that it's shipped. Go back into the sales order. You're going to see that the sales order is going to be partially fulfilled and pending billing. And you can go down here. You can see that it completed all of these stages for 4 quantity for the first 5 items. So that is how you would use CloudExtend to create a sales order as well as fulfill a sales order all within the Excel environment. I'm going to pass it back to you, Chris.
Got it. Kevin, thanks so much for that. A lot of you guys on the call may not necessarily use sales orders, fulfillment, et cetera, but conceptually, I think it was important to be able to show that you could use macros to really speed up your work because we are using Excel. I'll go through my last bit of tips and tricks and then use that little Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask us any questions that you want. So the first thing I want to do before I come back in and look at our burst mode uploads is just show how you can use a save search. And we talked earlier about using save searches to drop data into a template or to drop it into raw data. So in this case, I have a transaction-based save search. I'm just going to go and I'm going to search for all my transaction searches that are sitting out here. And in this case, I want sales orders from today. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. And if I choose download data into a template, then the screen would then prompt me to choose which template. I would have to go then choose my sales order template. And then it's going to download it in batches of 25 records at a time. And it takes longer because we're getting all this metadata for every line, all the pick list values, et cetera. So it can take a fair amount of time. I can also click download as raw data. And when I say yes here, this usually happens in just a few seconds. So here you can see we've got 3 pages worth of data, and I think it comes in about 1,000 lines each, so we should have roughly 3,000 here. Let's see. Looks like 2,000 or so right here. So we got the first batch, which was 1,000, the next one that was 1,000, and then the last one's a little less than 1,000. And now once you've got that, you can update any pivot tables or charts that you've got associated with that data. So I've got sales by customer. I've got some information on sales by particular states. So any type of reports that you've got built off of that data would then be automatically updated just because you're using Excel. So use that raw data download, especially when you're using it for reporting purposes. Okay, so I did promise to come back and go back to this upload jobs page. And this tells me that the sales orders were updated and the journal entries were updated. So let's go ahead and grab that journal entry first. I'm just going to click on this play icon. That brings me to the results sheet, and I can click on the download icon, and that's going to go back out to NetSuite. It's going to say, hey, go bring back in the entire journal entry. And we should then see the internal ID lit up in green over here, letting us know that this entire journal entry was successfully created in NetSuite. So again, 2,502 rows. You'll never do that in the UI. It's nearly impossible. Now, also, same thing with sales orders here. So in this case, I just navigated to the sales order tab, the table activated, and I can see here that the data is complete. So I'm going to click on download results, and we're going to go back out and get those 1,802 lines, I think it is. And then we'll see that these sales orders were completed successfully as well. And you probably all are familiar with and have seen at some point, when you get an error message and you see something lit up in red over here in the internal ID column. And then we usually give instructions on what exactly caused the error. Could have been invalid sales rep, invalid location, et cetera. But one of the advantages of using CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite is that we kind of validate your data before it's uploaded, so the chance of errors are much smaller than normal. So looking at the clock, we got through this in roughly 25 minutes, which I think is a little bit long. We really did want to leave a little more time than that for questions. So before I go to the roadmap and how to get help, et cetera, I just want to check questions really quick and see if there's any out there. So I'm fine going over a little bit too, guys, if you need to. So anyone, don't be shy. Please do ask questions. So I want to point out that we also have our roadmap. So if you click on, if you go to our support site and go to support.cloudextend.io, just click on CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite roadmap, and here you get a link to our public-facing roadmap. And this is broken into a few sections. So if you go to released, you can see, here's something that we released today. And this looks a little light, by the way, because this is the portal that we just created. So we probably won't backfill all of our previous release notes. But this is what was just released. Under active development, these are things that we're working on right now. And then here are some ideas that customers had previously submitted that we've already vetted internally as something that's possible to do. So we do recommend that you come in here. For example, if you want to look at this enhancement, you can read it. You can actually vote on it, tell us how critical it is. And we definitely don't want to see zeros here. We think over the next month or so, we'll probably see a lot more traction as this gets announced more broadly. And then here are ideas that customers have submitted, and we meet monthly to vet these and then move them up to this shortlisted ideas. We think that they're going to help customers at large, and you can also submit brand new ideas right here. And I did mention on how to get help, so support.cloudextend.io. You can search for articles. You can also use the chat icon here, or if you're working inside of Excel and you're on the template page, you'll have access to that same chat icon right here, and you can ask us for help here as well. And then last, we do have a YouTube channel. We'll be posting these office hours up on the YouTube channel as well. So here's CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite. So we've got a fair amount of playlists in here, a few tips and tricks that come out by email now and then, when we make small videos for those as well, usually without sound. And you'll see the office hours uploaded here once we get our recording from Zoom. That is our CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite office hours. I think one of the things that I've learned on this is I think we should allocate 45 minutes. I should probably talk a little slower, and we should remind customers that they should ask questions at the beginning of the call, because I don't see any here right now. Justine, Kevin, Joseph, do you guys see any questions out there?
Chris,
No, I don't see any.
I do see one. The question is asking that someone said that they've seen the NetSuite bundle for CloudExtend Excel. Is that required, or is that just something that enhances the application?
So it's definitely not required, but it's also definitely recommended. So when you saw that I ran that save search and dropped it into NetSuite, I have some calculated fields on that save search. So only with the bundle would those calculated fields be supported. NetSuite's web services won't export calculated fields. They'll come out as 0. So we run that search through our bundle, and then we kind of enhance it a little bit. And then you also get some control. I mentioned before that we typically download and upsert 25 records at a time. You can change that to 10, or you can change it to 50. So you have a little bit of control there as well. And then we also give you a few extra controls there. You can search our help articles for CloudExtend Excel bundle, and you'll see all those details. Thanks, Justine.
Yep. I don't see any other questions, Chris, at this time.
Okay, then with that, I think we'll drop. Thanks everyone so much for joining. Really, really appreciate you guys being a customer. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.